She'll make you think, smile, chuckle, maybe even shed a tear once in a while. But most of all, she's here to connect with you. Connect with Sarah Crosbie on QR Calgary.
So, a tweet this morning caused such a storm, it had the power to knock down a Muskoka chair and force you to reach for a toque. This is the tweet that has everyone in a tizzy. After 6 years in Canada, I just learned a new Canadianism from my kids' school. Apparently, they call folders duotangs. That is from a mom and woman named Ella, who is living in Canada and shocked at the duotang. I thought it'd be fun to poke into the duotang and the Muskoka chairs and the toques. So joining us for a chat on Canadianisms, it is essentially the Canadianism king. Welcome to the show, Stefan Dollinger, professor of English linguistics at the University of British Columbia at Vancouver. Thank you so much for joining us in Calgary this afternoon.
Thank you, Sarah. It's great to be there.
How does one become the king of Canadianisms? How did this become a research area for you?
It's a new moniker for me. I'm not sure if I would call myself king, but I certainly have been looking at these things a lot. Well, for similar reasons as Ella. I mean, you come from somewhere else. I'm a native of Austria, right? Europe, and you learn one variety of English, and then you move to Canada, and then you notice, holy smokes, what's going on here? What's all this washroom stuff going on? And, what's the thing with the toques and the carburetors and the bunny hugs in Saskatchewan and the Caesars? That's actually an Alberta innovation, the drink, right? So, and then you start digging. And so, of course, the longer I've stayed, the less attuned I was. But there's newcomers coming in, so, we have our methods. I pull the newbies, we do the research, and we find out things. And yeah, duotang is a bona fide Canadianism. Although there's always a funny twist to these things. This is an American company in the 60s, right? But for some reason, Americans don't use duotang, and the Canadians, they jumped on it and generalized it. So it's a product name, right? So it's really funny that your American listener forgets it. But it's the same thing with other things. Like there's, we said to talk about school vocabulary. So there's pencil crayons, right? Like that's what Americans call coloring pencil. But it's an old Americanism from the late 19th century that has been preserved in Canada. So there's one avenue that produces Canadianisms are, they die out elsewhere, but not here, right? Pencil crayon is one of them. And then there's innovations, that for some reason are adopted here more into general language than elsewhere. I mean, Gong Show is the best example. Again, it's a U.S. show that had a big gong, because it was whatever, for the 70s, but, the generalization to if something is quite crazy or topsy-turvy, Gong Show, it's a Canadian thing, right? And then there are innovations too, for instance, like during COVID, the caremongering thing, when you were hitting pots and pans for the hospital workers.
Yeah.
Care and not fishmongering, not fearmongering, but caremongering. So those are all things that are Canadianism. So there are various avenues, and it's quite fascinating when you look at it. And I mean, I just looked at the Dictionary of Canadianisms. We're doing the third edition, which will be ready free of charge by the end of the year. There are 69 from the education realm. So, it goes on that we have, and I'm sure there's more, like we have, from duotang, the keener, the student that wants to try hard. A bird course, 1969, an easy course, get to the credits, the dry grad, if you live in res, college meets something else here than in the States. Exercise book, frosh leader for first year. I mean, and of course, there's regional differentiations. And then levithrome, a word that spells a different word backwards, stop or pots, when you read backwards. So those are all those things, and there's, wherever you look, you find something, and it might just be Canadian, but we you need to test for that.
So interesting, though, that when you sort of think about Canadianisms, you would think maybe these are words that have been floating around for years or generations, and we hold on to them very tightly here. But newer words that have popped up from COVID or words that have sprung up in the past few years, there can still be new Canadianisms as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is, we've all thought, okay, with globalization and English becoming more and more important as an international language, that this will die out and we're all going to talk about tweets. And now, of course, it's been renamed, but, all sort of the IT, the global era vocabulary. But no, it's not really the case. I mean, you just have to look a little bit more carefully, and you have to make sure not to be influenced by common lore. When people tell you, it's all going to be global. We have Coke here and they have Coke there. We have Pepsi here and Pepsi there. But yeah, that's part of the story. But still, I mean, pop is the most popular term in Canada. Mm-hmm. There's some regional variation, not soda, right?
No.
Yeah. So and of course, I mean, if you're Canadian and you say soda, it's cool too, because we're tolerant. Yeah.
I love, though, that, okay, so the first dictionary of Canadianism came out in 1967. Mm-hmm. It got updated again, and now you're working on the third version, which is going to be available online, so we can track all of these washrooms and tubes and duotangs. Absolutely,
yeah. So the first one was actually the big project. This was this was begun shortly after World War II, and actually by an American. So there's someone with just a high school degree but a knack for words, started collecting Canadian terms, meanings, and expressions, and that's because he loved hiking in the Canadian Rockies, so just about where you are, maybe a little bit, and so he kept this file, and then he was hired with a big American dictionary project in Chicago, and on the side he kept this Canadian file, and that Canadian file became the base for the first edition of the Dictionary of Canadianisms on historical principles, because it traces back meaning in time. So how old is Canuck, and what did it mean, and when did it first, So the meaning that we use it now is 1849, the first one. But it used to be a slur term earlier for, darker-skinned folks that were racially treated quite badly, right? And it's interesting that sort of this slur then developed into something that we hold quite dear now. So this is a fascinating story. So yeah, and that was in the 60s, and it was again somebody who was not Canadian, right? Because it takes something to notice something special in your everyday language, and it's usually the outsiders, and that's quite the rule here. And so then they made it into a centennial project, and they rushed it to completion in 1967, so they couldn't do it all, but it was sort of one of 4 dictionaries. The other one, some of your listeners, the older ones might remember those Gage dictionaries, the Gage Canadians high school dictionary, then the middle school, the intermediate, and the beginning dictionary. So they're still kicking about in elementary schools and in middle schools.
Well, we will look forward to the third one, because today's discussion of the duotang has brought many of these words alive, people sharing their favorites, people questioning the origins of some of them. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Stefan Dollinger from the University of British Columbia at Vancouver. I'm looking forward to the new version of the dictionary, and thank you for the conversation and chat today.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Bye-bye for now.
The wait is